Good morning, everybody out there in Facebook land. This morning, I am interviewing Dr. Gary Salyer, and I am Paul Sterling. You're listening to Compassionate Talk, and every morning at 9 a.m. and every evening at 6 p.m., we do a talk. And the idea of these talks is to help create more compassion, understanding, connection in times that are stressful. So I'm one of the speakers. I'm the author of Argue Less, Love More. We're not here to talk about my book today. We're here to talk about Gary's. The other people who sponsor this call are my good friend and partner, Scott Thomas from Love Coach Academy, and Debbie G from Spirituality Gone Wild. So good morning, everybody. You can make comments below and you can ask questions. And I really love this, but I'm going to ask some tough questions of Gary, because right now, why another book? I know you spent years writing this book, but what's different about your book? What drove you to write a book?
Well, I think there were basically two things. One is I don't think I knew what I had until clients kept telling me, you've got to put this into a book. And it wasn't until a clinical psychologist came as a civilian just at one of my workshops. And at the end, he simply said, I've never seen anything like this. And if you don't publish this, he said, it's a sin against the guild. And I said, well, we don't want to honk off any deities now, do we? So to keep the scattering pattern away from me, no, not seriously. And I just knew that from that time on, I had a message that I had to speak right now. And I waited till it was the right time. I really had it down and had the coaching. And I guess it was for the therapist who said, will you put this in a book? And all my clients and all the people in workshops, I did it as a labor of love for the world. And it was a labor.
Have you been laboring with this labor of love? Which is, you are in the world of relationship anyway. So how did you get on this path?
Well, for me, it all started way long time ago, growing up in a dysfunctional family. And I remember being at this party at 7, seeing aunts and uncles getting snarky and mean with each other. And because they were drunk. And I remember thinking, why can't adults just love each other? And I had this burning desire that I was not going to wind up like that. I wasn't going to wind up divorced. And when I went to college, I said, I am going to make sure I never get divorced. So there I had a psychology degree and a religion. And my senior year, a professor asked me to come in and from the psych department says, come on in and take this new personality test. So I take this personality test. And 2 days later, he calls me to his office, gives me the results. And as I'm walking out the door, Paul, this guy says nonchalantly, oh, by the way, you have a 90% chance of having a divorce. Bombshells going off. This is my senior year. This was supposed to alleviate this. So I went a 5th year, got a degree in marriage and family, right? And I thought, well, dodged that bullet, got married, and then 13 years later, my first wife says I want a divorce, and I'm shell-shocked. I did every possible thing I thought I could. So then I do like 7 years of therapy, 7.5. And I remarry again. And 4 years after that, divorce is knocking a second time. So I do more therapy. And I do more research. And that's when I said, if they can't crack it, I will. That's what I said.
Yeah. Yeah. And what started out as a disaster.
Yes. Say that again.
Somehow we're getting echoing.
I can't hear one from your side. That's interesting.
All right, I'm the only one getting it. But what I said is every master started out as a disaster. So I know as, coaching couples for 25 years, I definitely went through my disasters. And it sounds like you went through a few bumps along the road. And thank you, Anna, by the way, we're getting some, is it safe to love again? It's time. So yes, keep going on your story. Sorry, Gary, I interrupt periodically, ask points, all that.
That's called attune responses to the chat.
Yep.
Yes.
So what was the turning point? What woke you up and said, I have something different, or I see it differently?
I think the turning point was one when I realized that after the second divorce, after more therapy, I was still either choosing or creating patterns. I was managing my pain. And then, I did a lot of research, and then I started work. Then I was asked to work with people. And then I started working with people, and I began to see these patterns. And I think because I had gone through such a dysfunctional family, there's a part of me that when the PhD reads literature, I can now spot the BS. Oh, that's a really interesting footnote. Isn't going to change anybody, but it's a really high quality footnote. And I just have a nose working with clients, and from my own history, what's going to change and what's not going to change a system. Giving something a label or someone a really cool story like, oh, that's trauma based and all that may be true, but it won't change you. And I'm interested in what stops us from managing pain or repeating pain to what actually transforms us, so we're not creating the same patterns. So it was noticing all those patterns and what really pulled people out of the patterning that said, okay, listen more to what your clients are bringing to you. And with the research, I began to see, four feelings. Everybody's looking for these four feelings, and the research confirmed it.
Okay, so that's a great hook there, and I'm going to ask you the four feelings in a second. One of the things I've noticed, and I want to ask you about it too, but is a pattern of change and four phases that they go through to create conscious change. There's a lot of ways that change can happen. But number one is awareness, and it sounds like you went there. Awareness, understanding, agreement that you even want to change, and then action. And a lot of times we jump right to action and it doesn't work because we don't go through the awareness, the understanding, and the agreement phases. So let me back up and ask, what are the four emotions you're talking about there?
What I found out is that from the time you're 1 year old, this is attachment theory. It's the science of how your brain is wired to love and be loved. From the time you're 1 year old, you have a love style, or what's called an attachment style, that will track for the rest of your life. And I asked the question, so if we know from attachment theory that by the time a child is 1 to 1.5, there's an attachment style, what tells that secure child that they are loved, and the anxious and the avoidant that they're not? And the only thing that's up and running at a year, as any parent knows, it's not story, it's not belief, it's not identity, it's not labels, it's feelings, only feelings. And the four feelings are welcomed with joy. So glad to see you today, Paul. Or when you wake up in the morning, you say, good morning, gorgeous, right? Right? That's welcome with joy. You come in the house and somebody says, oh, honey, you look like you've had a hard day. Come over and get a hug. That's welcome with joy. And then there's worthy to reach out for your needs. It's okay to reach out to ask for what you really need. And you're going to get an attuned, congruent, consistent, timely response back. That they're going to meet it on your map, not their map. You feel worthy. Cherished and protected is the other one. We get to go out and we all need to explore. It starts when you're a toddler, but how toddlers want to have mom and dad in the room to make sure they're comfy and they're safe, but they don't want to play, but they want to play by their toys. But we want to go out and be a we too. We want to have our careers. We want to have our big aspirations, but to come home to the safety net of a loving partner or the home port of their heart. That's cherished and protected. And then the other one is empowered with choice. I get to have a voice. I get to have choice. We get to co-create. We share influence. And if you feel welcomed and worthy and cherished and empowered, you feel loved. And I guarantee you that if you are missing any of them, if you're missing one, you're thinking, gosh, we got a few issues. 2, you're thinking, where's our therapist? 3 or 4, you've got a toxic relationship. So we want to replace unwelcome, unworthy, uncherished, and disempowered with the feelings. Your natural GPS for love is welcome, worthy, cherished, and empowered. In any relationship, ask yourself 1 to 10 about those feelings and you'll have a pretty good idea where you're at.
Awesome. Yeah, when I'm looking down, I'm making notes here, Gary, and hopefully everybody else is making notes here too, because part of what my whole quest has been is how do you make, well, Einstein said simplicity is genius, but it's only on the far side of complexity. After you've studied everything, you've looked at all the different pieces and parts, and most people find relationships overwhelming and confusing. And they're hoping to win the relationship lottery. And the lottery is like when you find the right person, you can stop working and, every happily ever after.
Yeah, the stop working part doesn't, because it does take work to keep it tuned, to always be, we do need to track each other. I mean, and in any relationship, there's growth. Whoever we pair off with at first, every 10, 12 years, we all change.
Yeah, so I wanted to back up. You said the attachment theory, the pursuant, the avoidant. So tell us a tiny bit about that. So we got like the foundation building blocks, then the 4 feelings, and then where do we want to go from there? So what's the foundation of attachment theory, and is there any changing? Because I am definitely not the secure attached.
Yes. Okay. So attachment theory was born when John Bowlby, after World War II, people began asking, why did these children who lost both parents, they were in orphanages, so they were fed, they had care, they had structure, and they were still dying. And he said they're dying because of a lack of attachment. And people thought that was bogus, but they were dying because of that. And from there, a whole science was born that started to ask, how do we get wired to love and be loved back? And what we know is there's 4 love styles. I only talk about 3 because one gets more into the clinical realm. But for normal middle-class craziness, like most of us have, right? They're secure. They secure, no, they're comfortable being in a relationship. They're comfortable depending and being depended upon. They usually pick pretty good partners. They are good at making repairs and being good at attunement. They step into your mind easily. Now, there's also anxious. The anxious learned that there was a congruent response, and then it was there and not there, there and not there, there and not there. And some part develops a fight response. I'm going to lock love down. This is not going to get away from me. So they become anxious or preoccupied with their own pain. When is it going to go away? So why didn't you text me last night? Where were you? Why didn't you call me at noon? I texted you 5 times a day at work. You only responded 4, right? It was these sort of things, right? Or as one client, she texted him 60 times a day at work. He was near, and she didn't think 30 was enough. That's anxious, right? Now, avoidant is the exact opposite. They learned as little babies, it's usually early childhood stuff, but it can be later stuff. Just want to say that. What happened there is their parents were just really not there. They weren't getting responses. And they grow up real quick. They learn to be self-sufficient, and they tune into themselves. Their worst nightmare is depending or being depended on. They become the Marlboro mate. You can be in a room with them, and it feels like they're on Pluto, right? Or they become Mr. What the unavailable, the emotionally unavailable man you've heard about. That's the new term. We're talking avoidance. That's basically what that is. So the key that I ask is, we have these labels, and like I was at a party a few years ago in Marina, a person who had read the book Attached, the basic primer, said, I felt so hopeless. It felt like when I realized I was a little anxious, a little avoidant, and now suddenly I have this label above me. It says screwed. There's how do you get back to secure? Because the books don't tell you that. So I wrote a book on what's the roadmap to help your brain have all of those birthrights, all of those natural feelings, and all of those capacities that a secure brain was given. So this is about a homecoming with love. It's about getting your brain to take a better deal with love, because at one time, anxious and secure were the best deals available. They're just not now.
And one of the things I just want to bounce over, just so people, while we're talking about it, there's a way you can buy the book or find the book, and I'm going to bring up, just so that people can see it for a second, and we're going to take it off. But there's the cover of the book, Safe to Love Again. And what I'm thinking about with your title, Gary, is that one of the most courageous acts a human being can do is to be voluntarily vulnerable in a relationship, to open up your heart again, because most people have been burned at least once, twice, three times or more, and had their, almost the most painful experience you can have as a human being is to have your heart broken. I've had my legs broken. I was a skier. I jumped off of a cliff with a parachute. I had broke my leg, and I tell you, the toughest experience was having heartbreak. And so, Safe to Love Again, how did that title come about?
It was, you're going to love this. Source had a lot to do, the universe, whatever you call it, had a lot to do with this. Really, I have felt guided for years on this. The original title, when I first started thinking about it, was Resisting Love, how we tend to resist love to protect ourselves, right? Mm-hmm. And I thought that was pretty cool, because a couple people, I was talking to somebody in an elevator twice, and somebody in an elevator didn't know, I love that title. But then one day I'm with a good friend. I'm at her retreat as a guest, and a lady walks in. I kind of know she's familiar, and she walks in late. And after about 20 minutes, my friend who's leading the event says, you guys all look a little tired. It's about 1:30. Why don't you take a 20-minute walk in the woods and get some negative ions up and running? So when I finished taking my notes, there's this woman who just walked in, and I said, you want to take a walk? And she goes, sure. So we're out walking, and she asked me, and she says she's Marcy and I'm Gary, and she asked me what I'm doing. I told her I'm writing this book. She goes, well, tell me more. And then she goes, she goes, I love the content, but I can't stand the title. I go, really? And then we got talking. I said, now, what's your last name? She goes, I'm Marcy Shimoff. I go, oh, you have a New York Times bestseller. She goes, actually, I have 6. And she goes, Gary, your content is great. Your title sucks. She goes, and then she rolls her eyes. She goes, I'm really good at marketing. She goes, your title and your brand is Safe to Love Again. And when she said it, I knew it.
Wow.
That was dropped on me.
When you're open, it's really important. So I like that you talk about the 4 feelings, and you also talk about picking somebody. Like I've watched a lot about Mount Everest, climbing the mountain, and I came up with this philosophy that most of the fatalities happen before they ever get on the mountain. Like the team they chose, that's was like set up in advance, and then up on the mountain it just played out. And a lot of times in relationships, people pick the wrong people, or they pick people who are unavailable, and then they say, well, how could I know? So you've got some tips, I think, on how you might at least know a little bit more in advance.
Well, I talk about all that in chapter 2, when I talk about, a generation without a GPS for love. And these 4 feelings are the GPS. Now, if you walk into any dating app, any Match.com, Plenty of Fish, whatever, what do they give you? They give you a list of values and characteristics, right? And we now know from research that compatibility in and of itself is not a predictor of lasting. What tells you you're loved are these 4 feelings. It's like one woman I work with. She comes in she's single. She wants to stop picking avoidant men, right? But when she was early on, she was given the feeling of unworthy and not cherished. Now, whatever feeling we were giving, that becomes our reference feeling. Secure people use welcomed and worthy and cherished and empowered. Anxious or avoidant were given another reference feeling like unwelcome or unworthy. are not cherished or disempowered. And one or two or three of those are guiding. They're using, the brain only knows that is its reference for love. So it finds an unworthy person, finds somebody that, what I call, they have the rights for. They have the rights for someone that makes them unwelcomed or unworthy or disempowered. When this woman came to me, she was feeling unworthy and uncherished. And she goes, I met Mr. Jackpot just before the session. I always love it when Mr. Jackpot shows up. And he was 6'2", Paul. 6'2". And he was handsome. He had an Armani suit. And he was a doctor. And he had read Gary Chapman, the Fudd Langlers, and he did Pilates. Can you believe all that in one package? 5 weeks later, she comes into a session. She goes, yeah, he does Pilates. He's checking out all the other women. That's no cherished, no worthy. That's the difference in compatibility list. And so what the key to picking the right one is restoring the original feelings of that tell your brain you're loved, that tell you're secure. So they become the reference, the compass for who you pick, how you create, and how you maintain a relationship. If you have those four feelings running in your gut and in your heart and the back of your brain deep, and you feel them, not that you know you're worthy, but you can feel it in your guts, and you know you're empowered, you choose, you create differently.
Well, what about, especially for men, but as masculine, I watched a TV show last night, God, and I look at what men are rewarded for in Hollywood. This is just a Hollywood picture, but in life we're rewarded there. But not having feelings. It was a big crash and burn, action, violent movie. And so you're talking about our radar being our feelings, but what if we're not connected to our feelings? How do we get back connected to our feelings so that we can feel welcome, worthy, cherished, and empowered?
Oh, that's a great question. Paul, you and I were born, women have emotional processes on both brains, on both sides of the brains, but we do have it on the right side of our brain. So when men argue that it's logical that we don't have feelings, it's what they're saying is it's logical to function with half a brain, and we were given them. And in terms of our relationships, what I tell the men who come into me, that women use feelings as they use emotional radar. You know how radar goes out and it pings off the airplane and it comes back, and then the airport controller knows where they're at? If a plane goes off radars, people get real worried in that, right? They where did that plane go? When we don't ping back a woman with feelings, she feels lost. She doesn't know where she's at. And when, just like everybody else, it doesn't go so well. And it will make our women much happier and more loved if we have our feelings, and we have a right to them like everyone else. And the other thing is women aren't that big of a mystery if you can attune to your feelings and read theirs. They're not when we turn off our radar, and that's when we go blind and they look like a big mystery. But if we can just tune into women's feelings and our own, I know for me, the day I got out of my left brain with all the PhD and started tuning into emotions, it was like a blind man getting his sight back in a relationship.
And I have behind me, I'm a little bit of the mad professor, but look at, for people, what are their beliefs? What are their actions, their results? So it sounds like, well, I was just watching this interesting tape on this guy, and he's like, you're always in your feelings. And it was like an insult. And what I'm hearing from you is our feelings are our radar. And if we turn off our feelings, we're running blind. And then we don't know who to attract, how to attract them, where to go. So how do we turn them back on again? Tell me more about that.
Well, I like for me, I know that I remember the first time when I started doing this training, and with some NLP training, and Man, they were trying to get me into my feelings, and then I had to attune to others, and I go, no, 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 I'm really good with ideas. You don't understand that. Let's do some more ideas. And for me, it was really scary. I almost ran out of the class. There was a moment I didn't think I was going to be breathing. I was freaking out in a way, and I couldn't get it. What it turned down to was deep, deep down. I grew up in a home with a borderline mother who was violent, who was volatile, and you didn't want to step into the chaos of her feelings. You didn't want to feel them, and you certainly didn't want to step into her. I learned to be up in my room, to be distant, and to get my feelings way out of the room, because if I stepped into that madness at 4, it was overwhelming.
Yep.
And so my brain had a natural way. It took the best deal available. Turn off all your feelings so you don't get overwhelmed. At 4, that's a great deal. But at 25 to 30, when I'm married and my wife is saying, I don't feel connected, I feel lonely, that's not a good deal. Old safety patterning that nobody gave an expiration date, and it's replacing that feeling, going back and finding the moment that feelings equal danger. And for men, we get along. If we didn't get it in childhood, we got it in junior high. If we didn't get it in junior high, we got it. I literally had a girlfriend once tell me when I cried when a dog died, come on, be a man, man up. This was in my 40s.
Yeah, there you go. That we get, and it's. I don't want to say that men are the only ones who get mixed messages. The feminine and the masculine get incredibly mixed messages all the time. So it's filtering them out. We're taught to be open and vulnerable, and to be a man and man up. And that's why I love sort of the work of Brene Brown and the whole vulnerability and dealing with shame act that's going on right now, that's coming alive. And by the way, I'm looking at different comments. Thank you, Anna and Jamal. Yes, thank you. My cat has been walking by, and I'm like, I have these sneezes, and I'm in fine health. So no big deal here. And Diane, I've been married 42 years to the same man, and there is no right one. It is ongoing. Love doesn't disappear, but it certainly changes. So there you go. Congratulations, Diane. Wow, this is amazing. So right now, I want to get into some tips and tools.
Well, I want to say one thing to every man out there. Feelings are not fire-breathing dragons. They're just feelings. We treat them like, oh my God, they're a fire-breathing dragon. And really the real manhood comes when you have a right to create your own experience. If I want to have my feelings, let any man tell me I can't. That's part of
the feelings is also there's a I call our culture a need shame culture. We're ashamed of having needs, and needs and feelings are very connected. And so, like, if I show my feelings, I'm one of the insults is you're needy, and it's like I'm going, yeah. It took me a while to make friends with it. I have needs, and if you stop drinking water for a day or breathing for 2 minutes, you become incredibly needy. It's like if you're getting your needs met, there's a sense of calm, and if you're not, but
exactly.
It's like, what do we use? And what I like about your work and your book is it's like a healthy way to look to get your needs met, because a lot of times people get in unhealthy relationships, and it's for the same reason. They're desperate to get a need met, but they have a radar that's not working as well.
Exactly. And every time there's a pattern in a relationship that's dysfunctional or not good, it goes back to the brain continually taking an old deal that wasn't the best deal, that was the best deal available, but they got to choose between crappy and crappier, right? I always created distance or found distance, because at one point in time, being up in my room was way better than being in the kitchen and knocked against walls. But that's not so good in a first and a second marriage, okay? Every dysfunctional pattern was at one time a life-saving one. Unnecessary.
Say that again. Slow that down. I'm like, this is really important.
Yes. Every dysfunctional pattern that has ever been run in a relationship was at one time, way earlier, the best deal available. It was once the life-saving pattern, except nobody gave it an expiration date. The true thing is helping people to get out of those old survival patterns and to have a full right to love and be loved. So it really is. Every time you see a couple running a dysfunctional pattern, you know that at one point in time, that pattern kept them alive and on the earth. That's
Yeah.
why people fight so hard for their rights. And it's like, because it's survival and the brain doesn't have, and it's really changing that. That's why I called it safe to love you, letting them know that it's safe to be close, safe to have your needs met, safe to reach out, safe to have a voice, safe to have your own experience. These are the things that people learn not to be safe with because they weren't rewarded for it, or it was dangerous to do so. And then they find somebody they only have the rights for, and they pick them because it's familiar, and then they resent them for it. And it's helping all those couples to upgrade their safety so they can have what they really want with each other.
So let me give an example of what I think I'm hearing you say. I grew up in a similar family, roles reversed. So it was my dad who was dangerous. And it makes total sense because my dad grew up Irish Catholic during the Depression and got moved around a lot of fighting. And his thing that he would say that I heard, I don't know how many times growing up, is the best defense is a strong offense. Now that worked well as a kid, but then when it came to him dealing with my mom, he could be very offensive. When it came to dealing with the kids, he could be offensive. And it was the programming that helped him survive as a kid, but destroyed his marriage because my parents got divorced after 18 years. I got divorced after being together with my partner after 18 years. It was like I called my mom and said, "How long were you together?" I went, "Oh, shit. Oh, no, that's a thing." So how do you identify that pattern and let it go?
Okay, that's it. So that's a really great question. Somebody asked down there, the book is called Safe to Love Again. And the key is, so when you look at that, what's the feelings that are coming up that tell you to have that certain pattern? And then we track them back to as early as we can, right? And we find out, and the real key is, and this is where people don't understand it, is that we got to find the exact flavor of safety your brain was seeking when it made a decision to do, like for your father, it would have been to go on the offensive, right? And then what feeling was driving that, and then to replace it with one of the secure. But you got to get the right feeling. There's a very difference when somebody says, "I can't be in a we." Okay, I can't be in a we. It feels. One person may find out it's because I lose myself in relationships, and there was a place where there was an overbearing mother or father, and they lost the right to create their experience. For another one, it could be I was always rejected, and I'm just going to pull away, an avoidant response. I'll just be by myself. I'll be self-sufficient. It's not safe because you never know when they're not there. Those are two very different safety mechanisms that will create the same result. You got to know the exact flavor. Then you give them both that, a feeling that you can be empowered and cherished in a way, not suffocated, not, overwhelmed, right? If you can replace those old feelings of not disempowered or uncherished with a we, and being in a relationship is you can be cherished and you can be empowered in the key that they need for them, their brain will gladly take a better deal. But if you don't find that deal with safety, the brain equates that with survival, and it likes taking its next breath, and it will fight you. You can't fight your brain. You've got to work with it, get in deep rapport, and then give it these feelings.
Well, I want to ask, I guess, for the people who are locked in houses together now with this social distancing, a lot of people are out of work. I've never been busier. I've taken a half a day off since this started. And I probably should take a little bit more. Actually, I might have taken 2 half days off. What can they do? Because it's like a pressure cooker. So one of the things that you talked about is the avoidance. So a lot of people are in sort of marginal relationships, and they get along in a marginal relationship because they were able to avoid their upsets. They could go to work, they could go to friends, they could be out, and it's like this whole thing that's going on right now is somewhat of a pressure cooker. So what are some tips and tools to handle the pressure cooker so there's not too much conflict during this challenging time?
Okay, so what I taught you, all of us have this right to go out, do our own thing, and then come back and belong. And for couples, that's getting super. We have no right to separate. We have no right to be a me. We're under each other's feet all the time. And you're right. When you're together, there's no way of managing it with going to bowling or going to work. It's there, and suddenly couples are looking at what's always been there, and they're asking the question, "Gosh, should we even be together?" Right? I talk about, the 3 things I talk about for the immediate shelter and home thing is you have to make all feelings okay, because people are going to be bouncing off walls. There's a lot of stress. And then you have to really sit down and negotiate how you're going to have some me time. Is there some area of the house? Is there some time? Because too much me is too much me. That's called suffocation. In another generation, they called it codependency, when somebody just wanted to mesh all the time, And so you have to write a contract, put it on the refrigerator. Is there a signal? I need. This is my time, and that means you don't make bids for attention. That means you let them have themselves. And then the other thing is, it's important to have daily conversations where you just talk about feelings. They're called stress reducing conversations. 5-10 minutes where you check in and you're ally. You don't fix them. You just feel with them. Gosh, that must feel terrible. Tell me more about that. What's the worst part of that? If you can negotiate those 3 things, make feelings okay, share the feelings without fixing, and negotiate the need to have me time, I think that does a lot. Now, the other big stuff you're seeing, this may be a time for you to say, wow, how can we actually create real intimacy instead of sustained kind of approach avoidance?
Sustained endurance.
Yes, or ignoring or avoiding. And a lot of couples have these deals where they just managed it. Again, managing pain versus transforming each other's right to truly be the most loving version of themselves for themselves and the other person.
Well, part of what I have, like over here, that I'm just moving the screen over, is the 7 core issues that tend to upset couples. And then, Suzanne, I'm going to ask him your question, but the 7 core issues: communication problems, needs not being met, conflict, wounds and triggers, broken trust, lost intimacy, and dealing with the D's. And the D's to me are differences, difficulties, and decisions, and setting it up. Like, I need faith, all of that. So,
exactly. Yeah.
Susanna says, is it really necessary to just stay patient when a hubby for 35 years became insensitive to my feelings?
So did it just become, or has this been like 35 years worth? At 35 years, I'd say, you have a right to really feel loved, to be attuned to. And and short, notice, without knowing anything from his side or your side or much more, right? You have a right to feel that, and you may need to have some time. I don't think that, it's kind of up to you how bad it is and everything, but you have a right to feel worthy of having your needs met, and that includes your emotional needs. At some point in time, I do believe in a right to assert that you have a right to speak truth to power. If he's not meeting your needs, in some respects, he's one up and you're one down. And real love is about having 2 people here. Now, I'd have to know more about it, but I'd say you have a right. It was Susanna, right?
Yeah.
To really Speak your truth in a loving way, not where you just vent, but to say, honey, what I've noticed is there's been this whole thing with not feeling felt and invalidating my feelings, insensitive of my feelings was your term. And the story I tell myself is I don't feel really known or whatever it is. And I feel lonely. Is there some way we can seek some help? Because I love you and I want us both to feel loved. That would be my short,
Yeah,
but you have a right to have a better feeling than that.
and the often, I call it maleitis, masculinitis. A lot of times the masculine has a hard time being with the feminine's pain, so it either thinks it's my fault or my responsibility. So part of it, I'm just going to offer an idea here, is to set yourself up to win. And what Gary was saying is like asking that question, what is it you really want? Because if you don't go with a clear request, he has to make up what he thinks you're asking. And sometimes what he makes up is you shouldn't feel that way. And if you just thought differently, you wouldn't feel that feeling. So he tries to change how you think rather than be with you. And if you can ask and go, honey, I just need you to be with me. I need you to reflect back how I'm feeling. So it's like, how do you set yourself up to win and get what you want? And also how he knows what is expected of him.
Yes. I love that, Paul. I mean, most couples, the research points, they spend 90% of their time complaining about what they don't want or didn't get. It's called criticism. It's called contempt, right? If it gets bad enough. And the winning move, that's a losing move. The winning move is to spend more time asking for what you want, right? To not concentrate on what went wrong, but say, honey, I've noticed that sometimes my feelings are acknowledged. And that's all you have to say. So, and what I would like instead is, right? And so ask for what you want versus what you didn't get. That if you eliminate, the criticism, the research points out that 96% of the time couples lead, the opening statement is a harsh startup with criticism. 96% of the time you'll get defensiveness or stonewalling back. So it's not a winning move. You got a 4% shot. But if you say it with some better skills, better communication, like Paul's talking about, it also follows under needs, right? And speaking up, then you'll have a better way. You may need some help with this one if it's been 35 years in the making. That's an old pattern somewhere along the line. He's got safety pattern there, and so do you.
Yeah, and it's setting yourself up to win. And in every complaint is a hidden request. One of the things that one of my mentors, Marshall Rosenberg, said is all communication is either an act of love or a cry for help. The problem is the more pain we're in, often we choose strategies that pretty much guarantees we're not going to get what I want. And like Gary just said, if you lead with the complaint, what you step into is someone who starts defensive. And so you don't get what you want. So Gary, you also talk about dating and sort of predictors. How can you tell pretty quickly whether someone's going to be available or not available? What are the warning indicators?
Okay, there are three things. One is if someone's, I hear from single women over and over again. We've been texting and emailing for 2 months, and he's been on this business trip and that business trip, or he just went away for a week, and a man that really wants you is going to show up in 2 or 3 weeks. I just want to say that ahead of time. So go with your gut feelings. We don't get into mental gymnastics where you are making excuses. Either you're feeling welcomed and worthy for him to meet or not. And the big thing I'm looking for is, as you begin to date, is signs of the we. Every great couple is a we. It's not 2 I's getting together, 2 me's. It's a we. And I talk extensively about that in the book. So as you're negotiating the beginning stages, notice how quickly this person makes you feel welcomed and worthy and cherished and empowered. And is there we. The other day I had a client who got the first 7 text messages from Bumble, and One of the 7 said, "Are you? You seem a little stupid about technology." He's not that. That if that's in the first 7 messages, that's called contempt. That's not cherished, right? And she goes, "Well, and I go, "What did you feel?" "I didn't feel cherished. I didn't." I go, "Then, do you want that for the rest of your life?" Go with those 4 feelings. Mark them early. If they're not giving you that consistently in the first 2 to 3 weeks by meeting you and attuned responses back, that's your GPS. Go with your guts, go with your feelings, and then as you get later into the relationship, notice how well they share influence. Do they create we's? Do they think of you? Do they always talk about I? Just notice the prevalence of I or we language. That'll tell you buku's amount. That's how yeah.
There's a song I heard a long time ago, but it was basically watch how they treat the waiter or the wait staff, and if they treat them with disrespect, run from the relationship. I don't remember the exact song, but basically you look at how they treat other people, and you look at even somehow how they talk about their exes.
Yes.
And so it's an interesting dance here.
If someone is always making all their X and then that's this X and that wrong, you know what that says? They ain't learned their lessons. That's all there is to it. And if they are going to make them wrong, if they're always, what do you think is going to happen to you in that relationship?
Mm-hmm. Well, one of my little expressions is if you want a remarkable relationship, you need remarkable relationship skills.
Exactly.
But most people treat it, well, if you think about, like, if you lose a football game, if you treated it like a Hollywood romance, you lose a football game, what they'd say is go home, get drunk, eat ice cream, go have sex with strangers, and you'll get over it.
Yes.
That is like, and oh, by the way, in the next game, don't try so hard because it will only break your heart.
Yes. That's a good analogy.
So it's like, if you think of relationships as skills, you want to look at what did I do? What could I do differently? And where's my coach? Like Tiger Woods, one of the best golfing athletes, and I'd rather watch paint dry than watch golf, but I still admire people who are masterful in any area. And he has coaches. So it's like getting a coach doesn't mean that you're broken. Getting a coach means you want to improve your game. And I don't mean relationships as this manipulative game, but it's a skilled interaction between people and healing it and growing it. So what are your thoughts on?
Well, we are not taught those skills. I mean, I like your analogy. I remember I ran track in high school and I was always fastest kid in the neighborhood. Why did I need to work on my game, right? Until we got to an invitational meet with all the elite track teams in the state at Cincinnati, Princeton. And I had been 5-0. I had outrun everybody because I was anchored on the 880 relay team. And he had always been telling me, you need to get out of your box faster. You need to be able to stride out. Oh, I don't need to do that, coach. Well, I got up against some dude that was 6'6" and I'm 5'9". And this dude beat me. And the coach just walks up to me and says, so how far did you get beat, Garrett? I said, the guy only beat me by 3 feet. He was taking like 6 foot, 15-foot strides. He says, do you think striding out a couple of inches, like I told you, might have won that over 220 yards? He says, add that up, Mr. Smarty Pants. 3 inches times 220. Says, is that more than 3 feet? And then you come home and you don't sit there and go, he broke my heart. I better not get in a race again, like you're saying. I just went home and man, that week I learned how to be better at running, what it meant to really. And for most people, we just go on what we were given at home. And I began to notice that myself too in my 40s. My God, sometimes, as much as I said I would be unlike my mother, under pressure, when I'm stressed, a part of her comes out. The skill set wasn't there. And we do have to replace these skill sets. Even today, when I'm with my beloved, I have to sometimes say, oh, wait a minute, that first thought, no, that one's, no, you know better than that, Salyer.
Yeah, yeah, that's very powerful. And actually, if people want a coach, I am a coach, you're a coach, you coach couples on having a transformational experience. They should get your book. Don't just get your book, get my book too. Show up and
It's a
get.
wonderful book. It really is. I've read it, Paul. It's a great book. I love your book. I've actually referred it to a few of my couples. It's a beautiful book, written by a beautiful man and a beautiful soul.
Yeah, and it. I say it took me 6 months to write and 6 years to edit, and a lifetime to learn.
Yeah.
And it's about the communication mistakes I made, because I went through 1 divorce, 4 broken engagements, and it's like I noticed the common denominator was me. And so what I want to do is,
well, do we have time to say one more thing about learning skills and these feelings I talked about? If you don't have these feelings running deep in you, like worthy and cherished and empowered, it is hard to give them no matter what skill set you learn. Okay. And the story I tell, because I've given couples really good communication, and if someone is running unworthy, somehow that feeling that they're running will be given to their partner, even if they do the steps. And so it's about having these feelings deep inside of you. So the skill set is a conduit of that. Now, what does that look like? When I was 25, I went back home and I spoke in my city, and there was my 3rd grade teacher over on the right side, 80-year-old lady, right? And I loved her. She was like one of the key people in my life. And she tells me this story. Mrs. Graham always had people visiting, and there would be a greeter of the day. Somebody would be the greeter of the day, and it was your job to go open the door and welcome them in, right? So I was always teacher's pet, by the way. And then my sister was 3 years behind me, and she told me this story about, when she got my sister, she got, well, it looks like we're going to get another Gary. Well, my sister was way more like my mother. She took after. And mom didn't do, having been borderline personality disorder, she didn't do welcome with joy real well, right? And she told my sister, you're greeter of the day. And she goes, well, how do I do that? She says, well, you just go, when the knock is on the door, I'll look at you. You'll go and open the door and say, welcome in. That's the skill set. Day comes, knock on the door. Mrs. Graham looks. My sister gets up, opens the door and goes, well, come in. Same skill set, but different feeling. And so it's really important that we have the feelings deep inside of us of welcomed and worthy and cherished, or those skill sets. People, that's when couples tell me we practice the skill set, I know they did it, they need more work on the feelings.
right.
It's both the feelings and the skills.
So yeah, that's really important. So what I want to do is I'm going to just show one last time the picture of the book, and then that is Safe to Love Again. Definitely worth getting. I got the book early on before it was available to the public. Gary was kind enough to share a copy of it, and so I went through it, and I've got a bunch of notes that Gary and I have gone through before. So it's been, I appreciate it a lot. I am going to also talk about a tiny bit just before we bounce out of here today. One of the things that I'm part of is my partner, Love Coach Academy. My partner, Scott Katamas, Love Coach Academy. This is where we teach love coaches. This is the sponsor of the day. And if you want to become a love coach, that's a great place to go. And you can find out more about the courses. And you can find out about our 9 o'clock in the morning and 6 o'clock at night, all the different talks. Gary is one of a group of different speakers we've interviewed. He is a remarkable and amazing man. You can find his stuff, and hopefully I can find that again. Gary, your banner right there. Yes. So if you want to just get a hold of Gary, you just go to the first, GarySalyer.com. And if you want his book, definitely get it. Like, make your relationship a study. If you want it to be remarkable, if you want to be a remarkable piano player, you wouldn't say, well, I took a lesson last year. Like, no, it's an ongoing. Mastery is not a destination, it's a journey. It's moving in this direction. Get what you can from Gary. And then I am going to say, come and get what you can from me. And I'm doing a course on June 6th with Heidi Love. And we're going to take you through those 7 skills right there. And you will learn a lot about what it takes to make a relationship remarkable, and the foundation that Gary's talking about. What you were saying, what came to my mind is the picture of the iceberg. Like, the skills are what you can see, and the more important part is the iceberg underneath, which is how do you feel and how do you deliver that. And when I'm talking about listening, because I learned nonviolent communication a long time ago, and a lot of people would listen from their head. Like, I fed it back right. You know, how come it didn't work? I fed back their feelings and needs and did the active listening. And it's like, oh, but did you come from your heart? And there's something that, for me, I know that I'm doing active listening well when it's like, oh, of course you feel the way you do. Like, something settles inside of me. So, Gary, any last words of wisdom that you'd like to offer us? And people are saying, thank you, Gary. Thank you, guys. Nice graphics.
Yes. Thank you, Jamal. Yes. And, you know, the big thing here is that nobody's broken. Okay. That, you know, nobody's wrong. I once was introduced at an event by a friend, says, oh, this is Dr. Gary. He wrote a book on love, and the woman recorded and says, oh, no, not another book to tell me how wrong I am. This is about, you know, your brain is already working well, and it just took a better deal. So stop judging it. Just know that some part of you deserves a better deal. And the other thing is, you deserve love. There's an epidemic of unworthiness out there, whether it's all the expectations online or just the ghosting. And you deserve, it was your birthright. You were born deserving of love. There's no ifs, there's no buts. You are deserving of the love that feels good, that feels loving, and don't let anybody tell you any different.
Yeah, and thank you, because you brought up something, and I'm going to ask you one other question, then we'll finally wrap it up. But a lot of times, the women will want coaching or therapy or counseling or, you know, that. And there's sort of a cultural rap that what it's like is that you're going to go, if you're the man, you're going to pay for it. And the therapist is going to gang up against you and let you know how bad, stupid, wrong you are. And it's going to cost you money. So there's a lot of resistance, although that's changing a lot, but there's still a lot of resistance that's what it looks like to get counseling. So what does it look like in your world?
In my world, either was old school therapy, which I'm not a therapist, was like you don't take sides, and you never side against the woman. I call it straight for both. I'm fair, I'm judicious, and my couples swear by me. I get referrals 6 deep. But I call it as it is. But I do it after I built rapport, but I'm perfectly capable of saying, look, that's not going to work, you know. Or, you know, with men, I'll kid them if it's a private session. Well, you could do that, but it's the longest way to the bedroom if you do. You know? But there's a shorter path. You know? And I talk about long and short paths to the bedroom, and this is one of the longer ones. You know?
Thank you, Jared. That's so clear. You know, it's like strategies that work and strategies that don't. So
exactly, I'm calling it straight.
All right. Thank you, everybody, for your questions, your comments. If you got a lot from this, get a hold of Gary, get Gary's book, and then let people know this interview will be up and they can come and watch it. If it touched you, watch it again. Watch it like 3 or 4 times. Maybe I'm a slow learner, but I watch things more than once. and I take lots of notes so that it becomes part of me. And I totally appreciate your time and energy, and we will do this again sometime, I hope. Thank you, Gary.
Thank you, Paul. Been an honor. And everybody here.